It was just over a week ago that our Supreme Court overturned the decision of Roe versus Wade that was made some 50 years ago. And this is going to be dominating our news, spilling over into social media, and a ton of personal conversations. And so first, just a word about the Supreme Court's overturning is what it means and what it doesn't mean. What it doesn't mean is that abortion is now illegal. It doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that states are now given the authority to determine on a state-by-state basis how available or restricted abortion will be in that state. And so what's going to be rolling out now, there will be debated state by state by state by state by state how available or restricted abortion will be in that state. Because of that, what this means is this conversation is not going away soon. It will dominate conversation in schools, offices, families, small groups, and churches. And because of that, and because it has the potential to be a very heated conversation and an animated conversation, I wanted to offer a couple thoughts that I think can guide us, hopefully guide you, and these thoughts guide me. And just two thoughts briefly. One has to do with the image of God, and one has to do with the grace of God. I think that the concept or the conversation about the image of God can guide how we think about the unborn. And I think the conversation about the grace of God can guide how we dialogue, how we interact, particularly with people that we disagree with animately. They believe polar opposite from what we believe. And so the image of God and the grace of God. Image of God first. In the very first pages of our Bible, we read that human beings are made in the image of God. And when we read about being made in the image of God, there's something about that ascribes value, importance. The human beings are to be treasured because they're made as God reflectors, as reflectors of the Creator. And I believe that this thing about being made to the image of God extends to an aged grandmother and also to a child yet unborn, a child that has yet to be born, both made in the image of God. Now, this deal about the image of God, this is what motivated early communities of Christians to gain the reputation of taking in children that had been abandoned. In the early centuries of the Jesus movement, it was very common in the Roman Empire, if you had a baby, you didn't want the baby, maybe you wanted a boy and this was a girl, you would just expose that baby to the elements, leave it on a hillside somewhere, the city garbage dump. Christians gained a reputation for going around, picking out these kids, taking them home, and raising them because they believed that discarded children were made in the image of God. In the early pages of the Jesus movement in our Bible, in the book of Acts, you see special attention given to widows and orphans. Widows and orphans, this was like the most vulnerable in society, and the Jesus community organizes itself around how to care for widows and orphans, the most vulnerable in society, believing that they too were made in the image of God and were to be honored, respected, and cared for. It is this concept of the image of God that leads the family of Ada Bible Church to encourage women to choose to have a baby rather than choosing the option of abortion. But we believe that the image of God thing is not just true about the unborn child, but is also true about the woman. It leads us not only to care for or to treasure the baby, but also to show care and concern for the woman who is often experiencing an unplanned pregnancy, and it's a complicated pregnancy. And this mom too, the woman too being made in the image of God, is what has motivated Ada Bible Church, for years now, to support organizations like Pregnancy Resource Center of Grand Rapids and Alpha Women's Center of Grand Rapids that just know that there'll be women who will feel absolutely lost and alone in a crisis pregnancy, and they provide stuff like diapers and baby formula and stuff like cribs and car seats and strollers. Things like, if you're under-resourced, we're here for you and we'll help you. But it's not just the stuff, it's often personal guidance, it's mentoring. It's if you feel all alone, someone will be here to walk beside you so that you're not alone. It provides spiritual guidance, emotional guidance, and physical help. And so this thing about the image of God, it extends to the elderly, it extends to the unborn, and it extends to moms, to women in a crisis pregnancy. Now, back to those two expressions, the image of God and the grace of God. If the image of God kind of guides my thinking about the unborn, the grace of God guides my interactions. What I'm specifically talking about is how you interact and how you relate to people who may have an opinion diametrically opposed to yours, who hold an opinion that is vehemently different than the opinion that you hold. And my challenge for you is that over the coming weeks and months, particularly around this topic, that if you are in a conversation with someone that you disagree with wildly, that person should walk away from the conversation with you feeling heard, feeling loved, and feeling honored. Does that sound strange to you? Does that sound strange to you? That someone you vehemently opposed to, in their opinion, in their belief, that they would feel heard, that they would feel loved, and that they would feel honored. It should feel strange to us because we are part of a culture where such a thing is strange. My friends, there's just this current thing going on, and it just seems to be that if I'm right or if I think I'm right, I have now earned the right to dismiss you or dishonor you. It's like, no, my opinion is what matters and you don't matter. And it's like we've reached a point where we try to win an argument, but we can lose the person. And so the grace of God, I believe, should guide the tone and words of our conversation, even when you disagree wildly with the person that you're talking to. There are two words that guide me in this. I want to share them with you. They're the words gentleness and respect. Gentleness and respect. Can you say those with me? Ready? Gentleness and respect. These were written by Jesus' disciple, Peter. You would find them in 1 Peter. The Jesus community is being persecuted. They're seeing some very dark days, and Peter challenges them to live with hope. Furthermore, he says, when someone comes up to you and asks you, how is it that you live with hope? You should be ready to give an answer. But when you answer that person about how you live with hope, answer them with two words, with gentleness and respect. Now, it's a different context, but I think this is super helpful when you find yourself with your temperature rising and your blood pressure, and you feel just the intensity of a conversation pick up, just gentleness and respect, gentleness and respect, gentleness and respect. In talking to your daughter-in-law, in talking to your mother-in-law, in talking to someone at work that you do not understand, in a dialogue with someone in your small group that seems to have a wildly different view than you do, gentleness and respect, gentleness and respect, gentleness and respect. The idea here is that someone should be drawn more to God's grace because of your grace in the conversation. This conversation about abortion and abortion rights is bound and determined to be freighted with regret. First of all, you might be experiencing some regret right now just in evaluating your words over the last weeks or the last months. And there just might be a moment where you go, man, Jeff, I have been unkind, degrading, dismissive, trying to win an argument and make someone feel like they don't matter, they're not important. There can be a level of regret from that. And I need you to know that there's room at the table for you. Pull up a chair, there's room at the table for you if you have regret over ways that you've handled interactions. And whenever this conversation comes up, I just realize that there are scores of people in attendance today or watching online who either experienced an abortion personally or encouraged somebody else to have an abortion. And as time goes by, as years goes by, there's a possibility to experience a tsunami of shame that can roll in with this, or deep regret over the advice that you gave, what you recommended, or what you did personally. And I just need you to know, if you're experiencing that kind of regret, it's my hope that your story does not end in regret. I just need you to know that there's room at the table for you. We love you. And we welcome you. And there's room at our table for you. These two thoughts, the image of God and the grace of God, these can guide us in what we think and also how we engage, how we interact, and the tone in which we talk about such thing. It is my hope that the image of God and the grace of God, that these guide us in the conversations over the coming weeks and over what will unfold in the coming months.